to my children's school. But the procurement standards and logistics are not adapted to the reality of small-scale farmers. For smaller amounts, many cities contract from small suppliers and producers directly. That helps a lot. I heard that in Ghent, in Belgium, they found an interesting solution. This makes life much easier for small farmers and for procurers.
Hello, I'm Julia. I'm a public procurer for food and catering. Our politicians want us to be sustainable, but there are challenges. As a city, we are responsible for the health of our citizens and our nature. Mandatory sustainable food procurement criteria would help us a lot. Good practice across Europe shows it works.
Welcome to my school! The food is not that great. Last year, I loved our trip to a farm. I even learned some cooking with their ingredients. My parents don't have much time for that. My cousin from Paris has 2 tasty vegetarian meals per week now, and a half of it should come from farmers from the region soon. That's so cool. I think the EU should decide that every school child get healthy meals and a food education. For our futures!
So, how do we change the food system with the public plate?
Sustainable food procurement combines all the Sustainable Development Goals in one plate.
And the EU Farm to Fork strategy can help to link small farmers to this public plate.
And don't forget to involve us to make it work.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this little movie. I put a lot of effort in it, a lot of good practice examples, a lot of good stories that came together, how to shape and realize and implement on the ground farm to fork procurement. Because indeed, we always say, and I usually, this time I don't have it, I have a plate in my hand that I lift, that there is a big impact, a small plate and a big impact, because indeed, if you would do it right as a public procurer and put the right criteria when you procure food, when you do public tenders of food, you can achieve a lot of sustainable development goals. But as usual, you know, what sounds very easy, it's always more complex than it sounds. Because also in different projects, among them Coach, but also SALSIFI, we discussed the challenges of small-scale farmers, especially also community-supported agriculture. How can you really make sure that the small-scale farmers, could they potentially benefit from public tenders? What are the possibilities? And main obstacles that we identified were indeed that for small-scale farmers, it's often just too complex. You know, who bothers with all the paperwork, with the different procedures? It's quite burdensome. Also, sometimes the payment comes not immediately. Usually can go up to 14, if not 30 days. And the size is sometimes just too big, right? There's a big, sometimes a contract that only fits the wholesaler. And then how to ensure that the wholesaler really goes also to small-scale farms. And finally, a lot of lacking information. There is this gap on what tenders are out there and the long payment periods. So lots of challenges, but we tried and invested quite some time to try to find out how we could overcome these challenges. And we did that in the frame of our European advocacy campaign that we are happy if you want to join the coalition. It's called Buy Better Food, which is basically trying with one voice to tell the European Commission, especially now that, as you know, the Sustainable Food System law framework comes out in September, to tell them, look, one policy instrument that really is a low-hanging fruit that really can have an impact is to combine the small-scale farmers, the farms around the city in a region, with the public plate, like for instance, schools or public canteens. And ideally to go also for minimum standards. And so far it's looking good. Also the campaign really made a change. And we're looking forward to what comes out. Currently the criteria are being developed, but we work closely with the Commission. And there seemed to be, quite a change also in the narrative. And there is not so much opposition because everybody agrees. And there are also good examples, for instance, in Italy, where the criteria are already minimum standards and very advanced, to France, where this is happening to a certain extent, and also in some other countries. So what we did with NGOs from all over Europe, we discussed what could be minimum standards on sustainable and healthy food procurement. And we developed 7 areas. One is healthy food, then organic and other ecological products, small-scale farmer support, climate action, social criteria, fair trade, and animal welfare. So these were the areas where we thought, okay, ideally, the food that lands on the plates in a school should combine all these criteria. And that's also what the Commission told us. They said, okay, if you have ideas, tell us what could be minimum standards, minimum targets, what could be the criteria, and how to verify them. And that is something that we figured out. It's very easy to say, okay, we support agroecology, but if you are a public authority and you say, okay, now I make it up, 50% of the food in the plate should come from agroecology, how can you really verify that? If a supplier tells you, well, this is all coming from agroecology, okay, there are principles, but how to verify them? And what is, for instance, a small-scale farmer? It took us quite some time to come up with the definition. So these were the different areas. Next slide, please. But before entering the criteria, for us, it was important, that it is important in order to make it happen, to have and apply 2 overarching principles. One is good governance, meaning in order to really make it strong, it's important that the national level, in this case, the national government, the regional and the local, work strongly together. Because, for instance, the national government develops the nutritional guidances or has support programs for farmers or small-scale farmers or on biodiversity. And the local governments can only do that far, because as a local government, okay, you procure the food, but you cannot do so much also in terms of social activities or on linking the urban with the rural and so on. And then importantly, the horizontal integration. It's not just about supplying food, it's also what could be the link to biodiversity, to agriculture, to education, to infrastructure, to logistics. In order to make it happen, that is very important. And finally, the market engagement. All good practice examples showed that in order to make it happen, it's important that as a public authority, you try to figure out what's out there. Honey, apples, potatoes, who are the producers, what are the issues, how to get the potatoes around the city really on the plate in a school in the city. And so for each of these 7 criteria areas that I mentioned before, we developed targets, criteria, how to verify them, why we asked for this criteria and how to get there, and what are further enablers. So in terms of, for instance, small-scale farmers, our target that we propose to the Commission would be that the Commission should support a target that at least 10% of the food that is publicly purchased should come from small-scale farmers. And we define those by turnover. We said below 100,000. but this is just indicative. The agricultural area we left to the national governments, you know, and the definition there and criteria. A number of employees, we said like 5. But this is more indicative, you know. For us, it was more important to create this link because it was shocking to hear that over the past 20 years, 40% of small-scale farms disappeared. And it's more and more concentrating on small farms. So for us, it was important to make this link and show the importance of linking small-scale farms with the plate. And the ways to link it exist. On one hand, it's about the market engagement that I said, that's important, but then also reserving contracts or dividing big contracts in smaller lots. Say, for instance, okay, the potatoes come from smaller lots, or the apples, or the milk dairy products, the milk products. And also applying, for instance, social criteria, like focusing on disadvantaged workers or worker groups, which small-scale farmers could be, legally speaking, but also contracting directly from smaller producers rather than going just to one wholesaler and taking all from there. And then possibilities like, for instance, here the dynamic food purchasing online market platforms, and I can go in that in more detail. Here you have, for instance, 3 cities that all had different approaches. For instance, what did they do in Ghent? In Ghent, they supported the setting up of a business-to-business platform, basically an online market. And that really helped a lot because for the farmers, it was great that there was an online market platform, and they took care of the paperwork, let's say, and the logistics. And so this online market platform would then make sure the products for small farmers would be sold. And for the city, it was great for the public procurer because he didn't have to go to the small farmers and do all the paperwork and the market. So in so much detail, they simply said for a certain amount of money in a public tender, the food should come from this market platform. And then in Vecchio in Sweden, they applied a dynamic food procurement. They said for a certain percentage of the food that we need, we want a dynamic procurement. So they developed minimum criteria, and then throughout the tender period, farmers or suppliers who fit the criteria could put their products on this platform, you know, and sell it depending on the season and what's available. And finally, Copenhagen, they combined the procurement with educational measures, which is also an interesting approach. Because eventually it's also about food culture, about food traditions. So in their case, who supplies also has to organize farm visits. And in their case, each child is digitally linked with a farm and has their own pot where they grow potatoes, so that they not only eat the potatoes, but also see how out of 1 potatoes, eventually you can get 10 potatoes, depending how many you can grow. And there is daily exchanges or twice a week with the farmer. So linking culture and education with procurement. Is this the last slide, Francesca? Well, no, this is then with the links where you can find more information. So in Buy Better Food, we have a petition on where we are happy if you support it. It's about a minimum request that we have to the Commission. We say actually every child in every school in Europe should have a good meal, and linked with food education. There could be a minimum, and is also socially just and would help a lot of families. And then we have this manifest of minimum standards in public canteens, where we also look for support, and we have quite some support. For instance, in Italy, it's already two regions that endorse it. We're also in touch with some national governments and some other cities throughout Europe to make sure that the Commission really gets this message of the importance of having minimum standards. But I stop there because it's not just me talking. I also want to hear if there is any feedback or questions that I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Yeah, feel free to raise questions also in the chat. So, and we will read them. And I also shared the link to the petition, which is for us really important also to advocate this topic to the Commission or policymakers.
Or were you hammered by too much information? But anyway, all these links you can later watch the videos or the podcasts. For us, it's just important to get that message through, and we are happy if you also support that to mention the importance of linking, you know, because during COVID, indeed, it was the small farmers who were the most resilient and not the big suppliers. So we said, rather than talking about food security and more productivity, it is important to create more resilient food systems by linking the public procurement, the public plate, let's say, and the small scale farmers around it.
And also we did a training on this topic, on how to link food procurement with the small farmers, and we had also a legal expert, and there are also the recording of this video, but the target audience was more the local authorities, but still I think it's relevant.
Mm-hmm. So wherever you are as producers, go to your city, go to your procurers and tell them there are ways, because often what happens, you know, in cities or public authorities, they have their legal departments, and when they say we want to procure local food, then the legal departments tell them, that's too risky, you cannot discriminate. In the EU, there is the holy principle of free movement of goods and services. You cannot say as a city, I want only local food or regional food. And that is indeed true. But as I said, there are many ways to be creative, still in legal terms, and to get the food from the regions by applying all these different criteria that I mentioned just earlier and that you find in this manifest.
There is a hot question, Peter, for you.
A hot question?
No, a hot topic question.
A hot topic question. What is the hot topic question?
Do you think it would be possible to link CSA with public procurement?
That's our raison d'être in SALSIFI. Yes. Yeah, the thing is, it's really more difficult with community-supported agriculture because of the amounts, right? But for instance, what we also tried, and Francesca here is also an expert. That's how she came in right from the beginning through her thesis also about, for instance, linking food procurement with bioregions, no, in Italian biodistrict, biodistretti. So we saw that, for instance, in Bergamo that worked, and that is, for instance, also for me interesting, and to explore more, to say, okay, why go to a wholesaler when there could be a biodistrict as a multi-stakeholder platform of different producers in a given region, you know, producers that are together form a biodistrict, and they could then supply the food, their products to a canteen. There are ways, at least in Italy, there are different examples in that sense. I know also, for instance, I don't know, one in Toscana, Qualità e Servizio it's called, or Bergamo, as I said, is an example. And also in Torres Vedras in Portugal, they try this type of. So it's more like the amounts. Then it depends if we are talking about, for instance, schools that have their own kitchen. Then it's probably also easier, right? When you take the food directly from the farmer. For instance, I'm from Italy, from the north of Italy, from the Alps. And I know that there is an exception in the Italian law for procurement that up to now, I think it's even increased to 20,000 euro in the mountainous regions, up to 20,000 euro. Public authorities can, without much fuss, let's say, and paperwork, buy the food and the products directly from the farmers. So they could do it easily also from CSA. Then it's just about doing it and not being lazy and thinking, okay, it's easier to do a framework contract, you know, of big money and no bothering with the small entities. But in theory, legally speaking, there are these exceptions. So without doing much of, you know, having different offers, you could buy directly from small scale farmers for smaller amounts. So I think it's really just about being active from both sides, from the supply side, being a small scale producer, and from the demand side, being a public procurer.
Yeah, and also if I can add, we in this project we exchange a lot between the CSA perspective and the public procurement perspective, and also there are like some features of the CSA who are a bit difficult to combine with the public procurement. But there is an interesting aspect of the educational activities that can be really interesting to combine between schools and CSA. And also in Brussels, during the project, we had an on-site visit, and we saw that in the CSA there were like a portion of land reserved to those educational activities with schools. So this is also an important aspect.
Yeah, I think it's good to combine, right? Because I think just from CSA is not realistic. But for instance, this dynamic procurement where you say, okay, these are our minimum criteria. And then for the next 3 years, whoever has something to, you know, fits this criteria can participate in the process. So if you have potato or milk products or whatever in a certain period, and you fit the criteria, you offer them and compete with others. And I think that is possible. What often comes up as a question is like, yes, but with CSA, what do you do in winter? You know, then we cannot just, how do we compensate then the lack of certain products? So therefore, I think it's good to combine it with, not with dynamic food procurement. So whoever has, for instance, it's then easier probably for a wholesaler to make sure that the whole period is covered. You know, so I think it's like with all things, you know, diversity is all the time best, instead of just going with one big to diversify.
If I can join in this conversation, I think that in this case, for example, in Italy, it's pretty difficult that the CSA, legally talking, can share only the food with the schools, because there are a lot of rules, a lot of laws. But I think that in this case, more than CSA, what we need to talk about is the LSPA. What this dimension of local partnerships with the farmers that are locally based, and then we can involve them directly. Maybe the CSA, they cannot produce all the food for the schools, or even the law cannot allow the introduction of the food without some criteria. But when we talk about local solidarity-based partnerships, then it's easier, and then you can create these partnerships also with other farmers. That I think, Peter, that this is the thing that you are suggesting. These experiences in Italy are much based more in local partnerships than in CSA, but still they are agreements based on solidarity economy, on locally, on healthy food. And I really like the sentence that you said, that every kid, every child needs a good and healthy food from the school. So I think that we could share this point of view. In the chat, I've uploaded the podcast that we recorded with Claudia Paltrinieri from Italy, that she's one of the main people, one of the main person in Italy, and I guess from Europe, according to Peter, that is promoting the local food procurement and healthy food in the schools. And I really invite you to follow it. It's in English. And it's an interview between Peter and Claudia, and it's a really interesting podcast to follow and to learn more about the Italian experience on local food procurement in the schools. So it's really a hot topic. Actually, it was the right question, the hot topic. And actually, SALSIFI is trying to include all these issues, how we can create these connections among CSA or LSPA. We do not exclude the LSPA exactly for this reason, because not in all countries CSA are allowed or wants to go outside from the small circle of consumers or small or big circle of consumers, but to include also the other kind of partnerships that can be included in an LSPA partnership. So
yes, indeed, what you said also about solidarity. I remember there was a tender also in Rome. For instance, they indeed said whoever supplies us the food, that additional points are given for suppliers that provide us fruit from social cooperative and solidarity agriculture and such partnership. I think that's also a good way to do it, without discriminating, because eventually every company from everywhere can then try to figure out what are these partnerships or cooperatives that they could work with to gain more points. Yes. So it is possible. It's just about doing it.
exactly.
But smaller, it's easier, yes. But yeah, bigger ones it's more about splitting. But it's work, so it's first doing the market assessment and then trying to figure out how the two come together.
I would like to ask to our audience, to our participants, if you have any experience on local food procurement, or how do you manage the procurement in the schools? Maybe it's also an interesting topic for you, as I mean, the schools are in all countries. Maybe you have a common an experience that can be interesting to share with us. That's a hot topic. Or if there are any other questions.
Yeah, GASAP has the link with schools and educational activities. And I heard from some colleagues that also in other countries this happens. Yeah, also because CSA are located in urban environments, so are not really far to reach. This is also an advantage.
I heard also from examples in France where the procurement was joined with private initiatives, meaning for instance, the school would buy the food from CSA. I don't know if it was CSA, I think so. So basically, when the food arrived, the school got it, in order to make the food for the week, prepare the dishes for the children. But at the same time, on Monday, the parents who picked up the children from school could also pick up their food at the school. I found that quite an interesting examples of public procurement and private initiatives, so almost public-private partnerships between schools, parents, grandparents if they pick them up, and the children.
Maybe I can share a little bit about the project Agroecology. So we had a project called Agroecology, allowed parents to collect their garbage of vegetable from school directly when they pick it up their child from the school. They can collect their baskets of vegetable. In addition, educational project could be organized with teachers but the only problem of this project is that the funding is over now. But if you want to know more about it, you can ask, or maybe we can share some videos about Justel.
Thanks, Tim, for sharing. Are there questions? Seems that maybe we can go to the conclusion. And I leave you the floor.
Thanks a lot to everybody to follow this quiet but however interesting live session about how CSA and LSPA can be related with local administration. We have heard about two really cool experiences, and we have seen the two sides of the same coin. I don't know if it is said in English, but I guess that you can understand. From one side, we have had farming experiences that is running close to Brussels with this experience with eco-rising, eco-pasture, with the sheep close to the city or inside the city actually, and how the community has been involved and all the conversations and partnerships that farmers and the local community have developed with the local administration. And it has been really nice, a sentence that I have written down, and to that also thanks to Timothy that was helping me with the summarizing everything. But Antoine has said some reflection that I are really interesting, that it said, it is difficult, but you need to show that you will make a big change that offer a higher, better situation. One administration is not just interacting with one person, but at the opposite, one person with higher power. The political level and administration level are not always agree, but you need to sensibilize both. And for me, the most important thing has been you need to communicate. And Tan has been really power with this sentence, not to communicate with local administration, because then you can demonstrate that good benefit is perfect. And I think that this is a really nice summary from Antoine, because he has been really pushing to communicate with local administrations. If we do not communicate, they will always say, oh, no, we have another thing to do. But as he was saying, they have the money, but they also take care of us. So maybe we have to just to push and create more sensitivity. And then we have had the other feedback from Peter that he's not from the public administration, but however, he's working with them and bringing all these successful activities, successful initiatives, especially with this Buy Better Food. I warmly ask you to join this campaign, because our organization has also joined this campaign just to create these synergies between farmers and local procurement. If we do not want to join, we have the opportunity. Somebody has created us the opportunity to create these partnerships, to create this dialogue. And if we do not push to our policies in Brussels, it will be always hard and hard. So I think we have a really nice opportunity to create these partnerships and occasions to dialogue, to talk, to be together and create stronger relationships. So as Peter has said, he says, you need to know more about administration procedures. You need to propose a big impact and construct a global strategy with manifest. And so for both is a good way to federate with other associations. So yes, we need to create partners. We need to create partnerships to really push for a big change, because farmers and CSA and LSPA can really change the local policies, but at the same time, there are some administrators, some people working at administration level that they are ready to listen to us, that they just want to have the opportunity to share their time, as we have heard in some municipalities in Italy or in France or in Belgium, that we can have the occasion to change the things. So I'm really happy for this live session that today we have shared together. And I warmly invite you to follow once again the podcast. That is super cool. It's a really nice podcast. I'm really proud to be. It was a nice conversation. And to follow also the information about the courses that we have shared it with you already, to learn more, a little bit more about the local advocacy, the advocacy at the local level for CSA and local administrations that are open for both CSA or LSPA and administrators. And we invite you to follow our next live session that will be 31st of May, okay, Wednesday, 31st of May. And then we will talk with Cooperativa Coraggio from Italy, that it's a really nice experience from access to land in the municipality of Rome. Then we will talk with another example of access to land from Belgium once again, and we will go back to Italy with another experiences of CSA, specifically CSA, and local administrations in the region of Venice. So it will be also a really interesting moment to share experiences and to have more local initiatives and successful experiences to share with you. So thanks a lot for sharing with us your time. Thanks a lot with to all my colleagues, Timothy, Francesca, Alice, who is registering. And thanks a lot to Antoine and Peter to follow and be our speakers today, our guest stars. And thanks and good luck with everything.
Thank you. Bye bye.
I think
Thank
that it
you.
would be possible to share the slides that Peter you have shared with us, that they would have been really interesting. It was really interesting at them. So thanks.
For sure. Bye bye, everybody. Ciao.